Marco Polo was a Venetian merchant and explorer who traveled to China and served the Mongol ruler Kublai Khan. Polo's adventures are recounted in his own writings, The Travels, where he describes the people, places, and customs of the East, including the fabulous court of the Khan. The work caused a sensation and was one of the principal factors in creating a lasting image in European minds that China was a fabulous land of wealth and exotica, almost too fantastic to be believed. Even if doubts remain as to just where he traveled to and what he saw with his own eyes, Marco Polo continues to enjoy a reputation as one of the world's greatest ever explorers, and his works provide invaluable insights into the Mongol rule and Asia in general in the late 13th century AD. Marco Polo was born into a wealthy Venetian merchant family in 1254 AD. His mother died shortly after giving birth to Marco. In 1271, when he was just 17 years old, Marco accompanied his father and uncle Niccolo and Maffeo on what was the elder man's second journey to East Asia, visiting the court of the Mongol leader Kublai Khan in China. The group was accompanied by two friars eager to travel as missionaries, but after the hardships of the journey, they only got as far as Armenia before turning back. The Polo travelers traveled on land by over the well-established and often ancient trade routes, including the Silk Road, that crossed the plains, mountains, and deserts that stretched from Europe to Asia. They went through the Persia and the Ilkhan Empire, Samarkand and Turkestan, and then through the Chagatai Khanate. Sometimes they stopped at certain places for months on end while they recovered from fatigue, illness, or awaited fellow travelers to group and form an escorted caravan that might better withstand the dangers of traveling through wild country plagued by bandits. In 1275 AD, after 3.5-year trek, the Polo finally reached the court of the Khan at a summer capital of Shangtu. The Mongol leader Kublai Khan ruled China as emperor of the Yuan dynasty under the reign name Shisu. Kublai, grandson of Genghis Khan, created the largest empire the world had ever seen, with Mongol rule extending from the Caspian Sea to the Korean Peninsula. Kublai's permanent capital was Kambaluk, on the site of the modern Beijing, which would be the capital of China in 1421 AD. At his court was famous for its splendor. The Khan was known as a keen supporter of literature. He himself favored Buddhism, but he permitted all religions to be practiced, and he embraced Chinese culture. Unlike his predecessors, he was pro. In short, the Khan was an ideal host to welcome such a traveler as Marco Polo. The admiration must have been mutual, as Marco was appointed a permanent and roving envoy of the Khan, a move in keeping with the Mongol ruler's policy of not using Chinese officials when possible. It seems that just as Marco would wow Europe with the tales of his East later in life, so too he was destined to travel to further parts of the Mongol Empire and then return to the Khan and inform him of the peoples and the custom he had encountered. He learned local languages, took extensive notes in his role as the Khan's envoy, and was perhaps even made deputy governor of Yangzhou, a post he held for 3 years. Marco, along with his father and uncle, finally left China in 1292 AD after staying an incredible 17 years with the Khan, who only very reluctantly let them leave. The excuse was Marco would escort a princess sent by the Khan to marry a fellow Mongol ruler, Argun in Persia. The Khan gave them passports of safe conduct through his empire and that of his vassal states, as well as parting gift of magnificent jewel. The Polos eventually returned home to Venice in 1295 AD, the year after Kublai Khan died, sailing an epic voyage that went via Vietnam, Sumatra, Sri Lanka, and the Persian Gulf. They had been away from Venice for 24 years and had understandable difficulty convincing their fellow citizens of who they were. The fabulous jewelers they had brought back and even gave the Polos the nickname Milone, although some sources claim that the name derived from the Marco constantly repeating the vast wealth he had seen in China. Marco's loyalty to his home city remained strong, and the adventurer fought in the war against Venice's longtime rival Genoa. Serving as a sea captain, Marco was wounded and captured by the Genoese in 1296 AD. He was an imprisoned, but at least this gave him the opportunity to put down in writing his epic adventures in Asia. Well, actually, a fellow inmate did the writing, one Rustician of Pisca, who followed Marco's dictation based on his private notes made in Asia, which are referred to several times in the text itself. Released from prison, Marco Polo lived a quiet life thereafter. He married and had 3 daughters. The adventurer died aged 70 and was buried near the church of San Lorenzo in Venice. A legend did the rounds that on his deathbed, the great explorer was asked to confess that his books was all tall tales. Marco said to him that it was not even half of what he saw in China, in the Mongol Empire, had he written in that book. That was his last one of his few words.